Good morning, and thank you for joining us this last Saturday in January 2023.
Oh, all of a sudden, it's
the end of January already. Okay. Yes.
Wait a minute.
I'm Naira, and welcome to Sunrise.
Wow. Just to be clear, today is, that's true, today is
28th.
Today's 28th. Wow. When did we say
Happy New Year? When did we have DSS?
DSS.
It was like yesterday.
Good morning, I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to the program today. Wow.
Well, time flies, and that means that the elections are what? 20-something days away. Have you got your PVC? I haven't got mine, but I'm sure I will have it. I have run around a bit and not having achieved any success.
Right.
I've had to pull a few strings, and I will get my PVC.
So, when you said you've done some, you ran around a bit.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you were being given the run around?
Yes, I was.
And you received?
Because there's a number that you're supposed to send some number to, and you'll be told exactly where your PVC is at.
Oh, okay. No, that's your 8014 was for your polling unit.
That's for you. Yes, that's for your polling unit. And I got two different responses after I had gone to the local government area twice. And twice I was told my PVC was not ready, and I was wondering, well, I did this transfer since June. So how come it's not ready? That's 6 months ago.
Okay.
Then after those two visits of it's not ready, I then sent my numbers to the particular number we're supposed to send. And the first time I was given a place, I went there, my PVC was not there. Then I sent again, I was given another place, and I said, I'm not even going to bother to go to this place.
Well, I think there's something that some people say about Nigerians. We're very resilient people. We never give up.
That's why we keep being treated like we are not people.
Unfortunately.
Like we're not human beings.
I couldn't even argue with you on that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think what's important for us is to recognize, for those who have given up on getting their PVCs, please don't give up.
Because I'm not going to give up.
No, I'm talking to some other people and say, look, you know, I don't try, I'm not see them. Because if you didn't give up on getting your NIMC, your NIN, national identity number, you shouldn't give up on any of these things. And I know that there is a lot of distrust of government or anything that has to do with government, but at the end of the day, that's the government we have. And if anything is going to change, you need that passport, which is your PVC, to change whoever or whatever it is that's going to change anything significant in your life. So please, do everything you can to get your PVC.
That being said, banknotes. Banks don't have money. ATMs don't have money. So where are we supposed to get this money from?
I saw some Twitter, whatever, ascribed to, well, one of the people that posted it was AY the comedian. He said, which queue are you on?
That's right. Fuel queue?
Fuel queue, PVC queue, or banknote, new Naira note queue. So
yes, I understand that the few ATMs that had money had long queues.
Just yesterday, I was at the mall, in the Ikeja City Mall here in Lagos, and I saw a queue in front of one ATM, and I'm like...
It was dispensing. That's why there was a queue.
Because you're right.
Many were not even dispensing.
I went to a bank. There was no new note. No notes. In fact, it didn't even have anything. I just walked. So if I've received any Naira note in recent time, it's because someone gave it to me.
Oh dear.
so that's just it. But you know what? Hey, you said it earlier, by Tuesday morning. Everything is
Tuesday evening. 31st, by the end of business.
By Wednesday morning.
By Wednesday morning, yes.
By Wednesday morning, all expectations are...
It don't finish.
So
that one don't end.
The Yorubas say the masquerade dance has a day that it will end.
Benny.
So.
Benny. Oh yeah, that Osun Tribunal ruling yesterday. Well, it's everybody is talking about it.
Everybody should talk about it.
And some people are suggesting, well, I'm not going to say what they're suggesting, but I mean, the crux of the matter is that it seems obvious that the information in the BVAS didn't tally with the information on the EC8, the form EC8AS. How did that happen? INEC, heads must roll. How is it that the information you have from the BVS is not tallying with the information you have on your report sheet, so to speak?
You know, this is it's going to be a very interesting, should I say, it's a very delicate case. Why? Because I'm sure you must have seen some quoting a section of the Electoral Act that says, in a situation where there is overvoting, that election, the presiding officer at that ward should cancel it.
And there should be a rerun.
So if there was such a case, and we are talking about this now, in the build-up to a major, and an INEC official calls it mother of all elections.
That's it. That's it.
And this is where we are. Then it's a very delicate. I don't even know how the lawyers are going to wiggle around this. Because, so on the one hand, the order has been given by the tribunal. Now there is a limited, I don't know the limited number of days that the case can be appealed at the appeal court, which would put to rest the case of whether or not, or who governs,
yeah, that's right,
Osun State for the next 3 or 4 years, as the case may be. So I guess it's a waiting game for me. It's a waiting game. There have been panic and celebration in the two camps.
Yes, yes.
And then, of course, we understand that there are places where there are protests already. In fact, one of the little videos that I saw referenced part of the judgment, and I'll read. Quote, the second respondent, I don't know who that is, did not score a majority of lawful votes cast for the election. The declaration and return is hereby declared as null and void. The second respondent cannot, quote, go low and bugawa, unquote, as duly elected governor of Osun State in the election conducted on July 16, 2022.
Well, you know who the second respondent is now.
See Kiss Daniel Song Buga.
You know who the second...
So, it's even very interesting. So this is the part that the protesters, how can the tribunal say, how can the tribunal know who is going to Buga? I mean, I don't even know what to make of this, but I guess we'll wait for the opinion of the appeal court.
Well, as you say, this is a test case, so to speak.
Very delicate.
Because the major elections are coming up in
days,
in no distant future. And this should be a lesson to INEC officers who are planning to go and ensure that what is recorded in the BVAS doesn't tally with what is recorded on the form EC8.
What's interesting for me is there are two camps of lawyers, Valero. Two camps of lawyers. The camp of the incumbent governor and the camp of the former governor, whichever way you want to put it now, have lawyers. Both camps have argued for and against using this same Electoral Act 2022. I'm waiting for the appeal court.
And have you forgotten what they say? That if you put 10 lawyers in a room and you read something to them, there will be 10 different interpretations to that same thing.
Wait until you hear 10 English lecturers.
So INEC, we're waiting to hear from you regarding this Osun case. So what's going to happen to those who presided over that particular election? Don't they need to be explaining to us how come two documents that are supposed to tally don't tally? What kind of magic happened there? Nigeria is waiting to hear from you.
Certainly.
Now, what is Sunrise all about today?
Well, to start with, we're going to be, we will toggle the arrangement a little today. But we will start with one of the most important issues to many of us, the CBN new Naira note policy. That's going to happen.
And then we're going to host the United States Naval Band. If you've been following Sunrise over the years, you will know that they come to visit from time to time. And whenever they're in Nigeria, they do pay us a visit here on Sunrise.
And that is the Artist of the Week.
Well, talk about
toggling
things around a bit today.
Okay. Following that will be the 2023 National Population and Housing Census. How far so far with that? Are you ready for that as well?
And then we're going to stoke the hornet's nest by focusing on the education sector.
Please, extremely important. And with all of this furore about money, about, what's it called now? About fuel queue, about PVC, and the uncertainty of uncertainties. How do you create a mental balance in all of these uncertainties? That's our lifestyle segment this morning.
And quickly, just before we go on break, I need to say that the fuel queues are not getting any shorter. And the president has set up a committee 4 months after the scarcity started to look into the scarcity.
Okay, to look into, I'm not even going to go there because it's like, sounds like something I heard more than 40 years ago. We'll take a short break. When we return, it'll be time to take on a new issue. Do stay with us.
Grab your cocoa.
And cocoa. Yeah. This must be one of the most famous images in recent time. Those brand new notes.
Stacks of banknotes. Now let's get the show on the road. End of January, 31st of January, which is Tuesday, is the deadline for us to change all our, I don't even know what to call them, old currency notes, and replace them with the redesigned currency notes. And the CBN has said that there's no going back on that date, even though they have had appeals from several quarters to extend so that people can continue to exchange their monies. But the CBN says no going back. As from the 1st of February, that currency stops being legal tender. Mr. Mefiele has urged those who might still be holding to those old notes to turn them in, assuring that they would not be harassed as they did so. And the Apex Bank also said that they're printing more banknotes to boost the availability. Of course, there have been complaints from many quarters that the banks are not readily, that the notes are not readily available. Some banks don't even have, and we have seen tweets from bankers saying even they who are in the banks don't see this currency.
Not don't have. Don't see. It's okay.
And many ATMs are empty. The few that are dispensing have long queues, and yet Tuesday is the deadline. We have an economist with us who might have some words of advice for us as to what we can do. Should we be stuck with monies by the end of work on Tuesday, 31st of January?
Just before you introduce him, let's just put out the word that we made frantic efforts to get the CBN to come talk to us, specifically from the Currency Operations Department of the CBN, to also weigh in on this so that you, Nigerians, will know exactly what the status is and how serious the problems are. But unfortunately, I guess that will have to be at a future date.
Well, they did agree to come, but they're overwhelmed by their advocacy work, you know, prior to
All they have to do
Tuesday.
is release the cash. Come on. What's the overwhelming thing? How is that overwhelming? Release the money out there.
Nigeria is big.
Oh, really? So that wasn't factored into the plan? That Nigeria is big?
Well, they've been doing it, but they haven't finished. They haven't concluded yet. Mr. Calvin Emmanuel is an economist and he joins us from our studio in Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Emmanuel. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So Tuesday is just around the corner. It's just 2 working days from today. And, oh yeah, some banks do open today, so you can still turn in your currency today. So the money is not available in the bank. It's not available in the ATMs. So what would you advise us to do? And the CBN is saying no extension. Tuesday is Tuesday, January 31st, full stop.
Well, I've been very consistent in my criticism of Mr. Naval and his team, the management team, deputy governors, directors, and the board of the central bank. I'm very consistent right from when this policy was announced, I think on the 26th of October, 2022. I think it's ill-timed, it's a smokescreen. There is nothing wrong with redesigning the Naira notes, doing the currency swap, old notes, new notes in the CBN Act. The problem is, number one, the timing, and number two, the window, the 90-day window, is completely unrealistic to swap 2.7 trillion banknotes. But I'll give you a little bit of perspective and context so you understand how the CBN is thinking. You have to go back to ways and means and the fact that the cash supply to the economy through ways and means went up from 869 billion naira, where President Buhari took over in 2015, to 24.5 trillion naira today, in violation of Sections 38 of the CBN Act. Now, when CBN Act was amended in 2007, and Ways and Means was created by the Senate, between 2007 and 2015, that window went from 0 naira to 869 billion. There's so much cash supply in the economy that has caused exchange rate driven inflation and currency devaluation. The CBN is attempting to withdraw cash back from the system and limits the amount of cash that goes back in circulation. The only problem with that is that today as we speak, 55% of the population is unbanked, today as we speak. And 55%. You have about 38% internet penetration rate. You have 42,000 base stations in Nigeria. There are states in the northeast, there are states in the northwest, local governments, the entire local governments that are cut off from telephone and internet signals. I remember last year when Governor Rufai asked the telecom companies in Kaduna to suspend the network to help them fight terrorists. You know, how do you want people to do their transaction if you have states, for example, in Yobe that has less than 500 base stations? How do you want them to do their transactions through digital and cashless banking? Look, cashless banking, right? Financial inclusion is not something you can force. It's not something you can compel. It's something you have to incentivize through your open banking framework. This is the reason why I believe, and I've been very consistent in this, that this is a smokescreen, and the real motive for this stricture, telling people that by Wednesday morning, every old note they have will be outlawed, considering that you have 63 million BVNs and 133 million bank accounts, and an average of 30.8 bank accounts per individual when you look at it on a weighted average basis. And more than half of your population are unbanked. I think the governor is going to end up moving that date because he doesn't have a choice, because this has national security implications. But the government really needs to ask itself, what is the real motive of the central bank wanting to compress this timeline into 90 days when, for example, in the UK, they have a 24-month window within which they're exchanging 50 and 100 pound notes that has the photo of Queen Elizabeth, late Queen Elizabeth, and bringing in King Charles into the system. 24-month window from March 2022 to March 2024. What is the rush?
Mr. Emmanuel, you said 55% of Nigerians are unbanked. This cashless policy has been on for at least 10 years. You mean that's the best that we could do in 10 years? We couldn't go beyond 55%?
Well, you have to understand that bringing people into payments, transactions, credit, insurance is not just left to the Central Bank of Nigeria. It actually needs infrastructure from government MDAs. For example, I talked about the fact that there are 42,000 base transceiver stations in Nigeria. And Lagos has the highest number of BTS in Nigeria, at 15% of it, about 6,000 BTS. Now, if a state or a local government does not have access to telephone and internet signals, how do you bring them into the banking system? How do you bring them into digital and electronic banking? You can't. So there is a case for the Nigerian Communications Commission and the Ministry of ICT to increase the number of BTS. Now, last year, the Nigerian Governors Forum said that it was reducing the right-of-way charges per kilometer from 145 naira to 14.5 naira per kilometer, which is a good development because it incentivizes companies who are in broadband infrastructure to be able to, build fiber optic technology to more states across Nigeria. So there needs to be an harmonization of effort from the Ministry of ICT, the NC, Nigerian Communications Commission, the NITDA, and the other critical stakeholders in the private sector to ensure that the number of base transceiver stations in Nigeria, what is popularly called telephone masts, goes up from 42,000 and it goes up to somewhere around 100 or 120,000. Because if you don't have internet and telephone signals, you can't bring people easily into digital and electronic banking. And that is like a disincentive for also PTSP, POS terminals usage that helps people to be able to do cash transactions. If you don't have access to the infrastructure, there isn't much the CBN can do. So it's not just the exclusive preserve in terms of responsibility of the CBN to integrate people through the open banking framework into the financial system. It's also the work of the other MDAs and critical stakeholders in the sector.
Well, Mr. Emmanuel, a number of things play in my head right now about the same issue. I think as at when the CBN was making that announcement about the redesigned Naira notes, he was specific in saying that as at the end of September 2022, available data at the CBN at the time indicated that 2.73 trillion naira out of the 3.23 trillion naira currency in circulation was outside the vaults of commercial banks across the country. And he further said later on that as at December 8 or thereabout, as at December 8, the central bank had taken in more than 1 trillion naira, and the banks also have about 1 trillion naira mopped up. So it presupposes that maybe about, we can say something in the wing of 2 trillion naira has been mopped up in terms of cash liquidity in circulation. Do you see the attempt by the CBN or the concern that informed this whole process? Do you see it as something significant, of significant concern?
I think they have a strategic direction with this policy. The implementation, however, is flawed.
No, we'll talk about the
governor
implementation.
says that 1.5 trillion.
Just 1 second. We'll talk about the implementation, Mr. Emmanuel. Just 1 second. We'll talk about the implementation, but let's speak to the meat of the matter, the whole idea of it. Do you think it is of significant concern that Nigerians should actually partner with the CBN in addressing it?
It's important to partner with the CBN to address it. But the question you have to ask, the meat of the issue here, you have to ask is, what is the ratio of the unbanked to the banked? Is there infrastructure for the unbanked to come into the banking system? That's the meat of the matter. That's the question you have to ask. If you're asking them to bring their cash back into the banking system and saying that there has to be more cash in the banks than there are outside of the banks, how do they do their transactions? There are markets in the southeast, there are markets in the northeast, there are markets in the northwest, where they do 600, 800, 1 billion naira cash transactions daily. Now, these people normally will want to do banking transactions. But the question is, if you go to a market that is close to a forest, do you have telephone or internet signal to be able to do a bank transfer or mobile money transaction? That's the question you have to ask. These are realities in Nigeria. You know, it's very easy for us to pontificate from urban centers, from Abuja, from Lagos, from Port Harcourt, from Ibadan. But the question is, when you go to Borno, Yobe, you go to Adamawa, you go to Taraba, yeah? At the infrastructure we enjoy in the urban areas and semi-urban areas, are they available in those areas? And the rural population in Nigeria is more than the urban population. That's the reality of the matter. The data doesn't lie. Data released by Nigerian Communications Commission shows that the internet penetration rates is somewhere around 38 to 40%. That's the reality of the matter. How do you bring people into the system? Yes, bring their cash into the system by compelling them within a 90-day window and telling them that they can't withdraw it because the banks are saying that they are receiving only about a tenth of the monies that were returned to the vaults of the CBN.
Perhaps that's a fresh concern, Mr. Emmanuel.
They can't withdraw their money back when there is no infrastructure for them to
just
use
1 second.
electronic and digital channels.
Perhaps that's that raises the fresh concern of timing. And you already said you guess that, you know, within in a matter of time, the CBN might be compelled to extend the time. Whether or not you see that happening, I think is another thing we want to look at, because if, for instance, the CBN says, look, we had 2.7 trillion naira out of that, you know, milling around out of in circulation out of the bank vaults, and now we are getting closer and closer to what exactly we want to achieve. Do you see a chance where the CBN would not take the risk in saying that date stands, and whatever is out of circulation, we consider it a loss to the nation, and perhaps some kind of sacrifice that the Nigerians whose monies or cash are still out of circulation have to make for nation building?
I think that is going to be like a very, it's a weird thing to hear, but in a country like Nigeria, nothing is impossible. I'll tell you what, the CBN governor insisting on January 31 is a national security risk. It's something that goes beyond the Central Bank of Nigeria. It goes as far as the National Security Council, you know, at the presidency. I don't think that's a risk that they are willing to take. At the end of the day, this coming week, he has to announce an extension to people bringing in their monies into the banking system. He doesn't have a choice. Because you saying that you're going to outlaw old Naira notes is going to cause a pandemonium around Nigeria. How do you compensate the people whose notes are outlawed and they can't use anymore?
Mr. Emmanuel.
It's going to cause a pandemonium. Say it's a national security risk.
Mr. Emmanuel, the CBN governor spoke 2 days ago and said he had bad news for those who were asking for an extension, that there would be no extension.
He said it, yes. But then he's going to have to put up with the presidency on the intelligence gathering they've had, on the implication of him insisting that by February 1, he's going to outlaw any currency that's not in circulation, given that the window for this currency swap is too short. There's going to be a crisis. I don't think he's ready for that.
Even when the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria himself said, there is no going back.
Well, there's no going back. He said that, but we still have about 3 days to the deadline. On the day of the deadline, I'm expecting an announcement that there's going to be an extension of that date.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Emmanuel. In the middle of all this, about 2 days ago or so, the CBN also launched a, should I call it a domestic card scheme called Afrigo. How does that fit into all this that we're talking about?
It doesn't fit, and I'll tell you why it doesn't fit. It's a simple commercial play. Let me give you a background. Afrigo Payments Limited is a subsidiary of Nigerian Interbank Settling System, NIBSS, that's in charge of clearing of checks, general interbank recurring order, GRO for bulk payments, automated debit transactions and automated credit transactions. All the instant switch of payments when you transfer from one bank to the other, or same bank, or you pay bills, that's NIBPS. So they are basically like coming out with their subsidiary company, Afrigo, to set up a domestic card scheme that's in line with what has been done with in China, in Russia, in India, and in Turkey. Okay, to compete with international payment companies, because I think that the government realizes that having your payment data infrastructure in the hands of international companies like Visa, MasterCard, UnionPay is a national security risk. Okay, so they are coming with that to compete with these companies to provide a local alternative to this card. So it doesn't fit into this argument about Naira design and financial inclusion. It doesn't fit.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, you notice that with the countries that I called, China, Russia, India, and Turkey, except for Turkey, China, Russia, and India are part of the BRICS. Post Russia and Ukraine, China, Russia, and India's relationship has become closer. They've even gone away from the SWIFT system of bank settlement payments for international transactions to the SPFS, right? Because Russia was, booted out of the SWIFT network because of what it did in Ukraine, okay? These countries are not comfortable with having Western companies hold their financial data infrastructure for debit and credit card payments. So I think Nigeria is trying to toe that line. But the question I always like to ask is, on your list of priorities, what are the most important things to tackle? The most important thing to tackle today in our economy is inflation. Why is the governor of the central bank running around in circles focusing on the things that are not the most important things to tackle for the well-being of Nigerians? That's the question I have.
Well, what do you think could inform or could have informed the decision to have a very short window? Because, I mean, I look back in time. I look back at times when Nigeria has changed currency or, redesigned currency, if you want to put it that way. It's the first time I remember that there is this much pressure of people trying to get the new notes. It's the first time I'm coming to it. As a matter of fact, I remember when the biggest denomination at the time was coming out, the 20 Naira note, it was with excitement that people waited for it because there was a lot of announcement about it. The images were sent out. People, expected to handle the new notes in their hands. Back in the, I think even in the 70s into the 80s and all of that. So, and we've had similar occasions down through the years. This is the first time we're having this kind of pressure. There are those who have alluded to the possibility of politics into all of this melee. What, in your opinion, could have informed such a short window for the CBN to mop up trillions of naira, and as at now, 3 days or thereabouts to the expiration of the deadline, there are still tens, if not hundreds of billions of naira still in circulation?
There's an economic reason I can think of, and there's a political reason I can think of. The economic side is ways and means. There's so much cash in circulation. This was a merciless play to bring a backdoor for reducing the amount of cash in circulation and see how that can bring down the level of inflation that we currently have at 21.34%, which I think is ineffective because even as at the last week of December, the Senate approved a supplementary budget of 1 trillion naira, and they've approved for the federal government to go back to that window to borrow another 819 billion naira from the federal government, from the CBN. There's a political side to the argument, and the side was, it's going to restrict terrorist financing, it's going to restrict vote buying. Question I have for the government is, number one, let's go back to the extant laws. Vote buying is contained in sections 84 to 93 of the 2022 Electoral Act. It's not the purview of the governor of the central bank to fight vote buying. Terrorist financing is contained in the act that establishes the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit of 2018 on generating suspicious transaction reports. It's not in the purview of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's not their work. So for me, it actually has like ulterior motives, and Nigerians are not aware of. They're just bringing up the official reasons, because you compelling people to exchange trillions of notes in such a short period of time definitely has an ulterior motive in play. But I think that this policy is definitely targeted at some political actors on the political side, and then on the economic side, it's trying to use one bird to kill two stones. But at the end of the day, however good intention this policy is, I honestly believe that Nigerians are the ones who have to pay the collateral damage for whatever fights that are ongoing, and for whatever chess moves that they are playing.
Unfortunately, the central bank couldn't join us this morning to answer some of those questions. We'd just like to thank you, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, who joined us from Abuja. Mr. Emmanuel is an economist. Thank you very much for coming to share your insights.
Thank you.
With us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Do stay with us.
Producing?
Are you wondering why we have soldiers playing music in our studio?
I won't even advise you to
Well,
wonder.
They're not even soldiers to start with.
But so what's with the uniform then?
Well,
Don't answer that way because you don't want to answer that.
this is naval uniform.
Okay.
And it's the U.S. naval uniform.
And
this is the U.S. naval band.
and
what else?
it's not the first time here.
It's not their first time.
Okay.
It's actually their third time in 4 years. And they are here on a mission. They're visiting Nigeria to support the ongoing 2023 Obangame Express, which is the largest multinational maritime exercise in Western and Central Africa. And this is conducted by the U.S. Naval Forces, Africa, and sponsored by U.S. Africa Command.
Well, with all of that introduction, I don't know, let's just go into a little conversation before they come back to play some more. Would have had them at the end, but hey, some other exigencies of duty, would I say. Joining us this morning are two musician second-class officers, Luke Reed and Kevin Nitz. This is Kevin Nitz and Luke Reed. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's our pleasure.
First of all, she said you're not soldiers. Confirm or refute?
No, we're sailors.
Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
No, but we're used to seeing sailors in white. Why are you in fatigues?
This is our Navy working uniform. Tonight we'll be in our dress whites.
Oh, okay. The white is for later.
So you are on duty right now?
Yes.
Okay, but you're not on water. Don't let me that. Okay, so countless questions buzzing in my head. I'm sure you don't have all the time for all of it, but you're Marines and you play in the Naval Band. I'm wondering, for you individually, how did it come to you?
So I was studying music at a couple different schools, and I was teaching, and I'd heard, stories of, people who had done this job before, and I'd seen concerts from people who had done this job before, and then a couple people in bands who I've since worked with had came to my school at the University of North Texas, and I auditioned and made it in, and I've really been loving it so far.
Well, why would you? And of course, you are from a musical family?
Yes, actually, my father was in the Navy band back in the 80s. So
okay.
So you inherited your role.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, and for you, how's it been so far?
Oh, this has been an amazing job. I wouldn't even call it a job because we, as you saw, we get to do what we love, and at the same time, we use it to create these relationships and these partnerships with the United States and with the rest of the world. It's been amazing.
When you started playing, you're the captain of the band, right?
I am the leader of the brass band.
The leader of the
Yes.
brass band. First of all, I've seen all kinds of wind instruments there.
Yes.
And that one that had a big horn, what you call each of them?
That is the sousaphone.
Okay.
It's also known as a tuba.
Okay.
But it's the American tuba.
Okay. Then there is a trumpet.
2 trumpets.
Okay.
2 saxophones.
2 saxophones.
And I play the trombone.
And the trombone.
And I'll be, of course, the drum set.
Now you know.
Okay. Oh, that's the trombone.
Yes. Okay. Trombone's the long one.
Okay. All right.
But when you started playing, even while you rehearsed, it sounded a little like some form of Afrobeat.
Oh, absolutely. So this ensemble has its roots based in the New Orleans brass band culture, I guess you will. And as you know, the music that comes out of New Orleans is very heavily influenced by, the African beats, the Afro-Cuban styles. It's very much a hodgepodge, if you will, of all kinds of different influences to create kind of its own thing. But you'll definitely hear African roots in
most of the music that we play.
I did hear.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Needs, what kind of other music does the band play? Does it play Nigerian music, for instance?
Yes, we do. So I'm the unit leader of the Woodwind Quintet, which is a unit that's very deeply steeped in the classical tradition. But we really have things from all over the world. We have, we have American music, we have French music, we have Italian music, and we have 3 or 4 songs from Africa, one specifically from Nigeria that we are playing while we're here. We'll be playing tonight.
What's it called?
It's called Obangiji.
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 Don't Okay. I think that word has its roots either in the north or in southwest. I'm not really sure. But so what then would be the you've toured so many countries, right?
Yes.
Luke has.
Yes, this band, specifically the band that's stationed in Naples, Italy, our area of responsibility is all of Europe and all of Africa. So every year, especially this brass band, every year we tour several countries in Africa every year.
Mr. Needs, what's in your opinion would you say for anyone who cares to listen and who would be looking forward to hearing you tonight, what would be the reason you would say, okay, this is why we are playing, why we have the U.S. Naval Band and why they play?
Well, the reason we're here is for Obangame Express, right? We're here to build partnerships. And that isn't just limited to the naval exercises. We are here to bring music to the people. We're here to build connections. We're here to meet you here, to meet you all out, and bring our music to you. And it's really a joy to do so.
We're also here to learn as well. Like I know that my guys are really excited to collaborate with other Nigerian artists to grow our language. Music is a universal language. We can speak to everyone through music, and the only way you can get better at speaking through music is hearing other languages and trying to incorporate that into what we do. So we're here to make partnerships and to show that both Nigeria and the United States are stronger together.
Have you met any Nigerian musicians that you want to collaborate with?
We have been in contact with a few, but we haven't met them yet. We actually did a joint little concert with the Nigerian Navy Band at the opening ceremony yesterday. So, and I think we're expecting to collaborate a little more next week with them.
How long have you been here?
We've just been here for a few days so far.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you both. I hope you don't have the same choices. Which Nigerian music are you aware of before you came?
To be honest, I wasn't really aware of much. I was aware of the popular Arya Starr song, mainly because of these things last week.
Which one is that?
Ira Starr, her song Rush.
Ira Starr. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Oh,
Okay.
your
yes.
best friend.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But there's this one that is very popular. Okay, how many popular other than Ira Starr, as you're aware of? There is this one that's making the round everywhere, all over the world now. It's Buga. Have you heard about Buga?
Buga.
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 Yeah.
No,
It's not Buga, it's
I've
Buga.
not.
Wow.
There's intonation.
It was played at the World Cup. It was played in Argentina after they took the cup home.
They were on the seas.
Oh, you didn't know it was Nigerian? It is.
No, that's wonderful.
Thank you for staying with us. I guess that music really puts you in the mood.
Yeah.
Now, let's move on and do other serious matters now.
Okay, all right. So I can relax. Okay.
And I'm talking about the 2023 National Population and Housing Census.
That's a serious matter.
This will take place in less than 4 months, and the Population Commission has announced that the census of this year is going to be different. You know, the past ones were marred by all kinds of controversy, but this time the Commission is saying it's going to be different because they're deploying cutting-edge technology, which will include Global Positioning System, otherwise known as GPS, as well as satellite images, noting that every building in the country has already been coded for that purpose.
Is there going to be thermal imaging as well?
The Commission is sending 2 of their reps.
Okay.
So we shall ask them the questions.
Okay, because then they won't have to go around. Just take a picture of the image of a house. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's the number of people are there.
That's for the house, but you still have to go count the people in there.
I mean, thermal imaging means you can count the people through the walls. Yeah.
Ah,
Yep.
okay. Population Commission. Are you deploying that as well? Well, okay, it's my pleasure. Let me welcome the guests first. Spokesman to Borno State Governor, Issa Gusau, is with us in our Abuja studio. Good morning, Mr. Gusau.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. We expect the Federal Commissioner, Lagos State, to also join us shortly. But in the meantime, we're glad that we have Mr. Gusau with us. Mr. Gusau, how are you preparing? I mean, by you, I mean Borno State. How are you preparing for this census?
Well, you know, Borno, like I always said, is very lucky. We have a governor, Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, that is always proactive. I think he has made the whole thing easier for the National Population Commission, because as soon as he came on board in May 2019, his focus was to continue on the reconstructions of the previous administration where he had worked as a commissioner. So within the last 3 years, Governor Zulum has led to the resettlement of about 1 million IDPs. About 1 million IDPs have been resettled, more than 10,000 houses have been rebuilt, about 20 communities have been resettled. Right now, IDP camps in Maiduguri are officially closed. So largely, the census work is going to be easier for the National Population Commission. Most of the communities are back, activities are going back. So I think the state government has made it a bit easier, a lot easier for the NPC.
Mr. Gusau, are there any more IDP? You said most of them have been resettled. They have gone back to, are there still any in operation?
In Maiduguri, for instance, IDP camps have been officially closed between Maiduguri and Jere, which used to have the highest number. But there are about 10 local government areas where you have IDP camps within the capital headquarters of these local government areas. For instance, in Mongono, there are about 90,000 IDPs from our 4 local government areas, from Marte, Guzamala, some parts of Mobar, and about 2 other local government areas. There are IDP camps in Goza town, in Pulka, in Damboa, in Ganzai. About 10 local government areas have got some IDP camps. But the most of those residents are within the host communities.
And one thing before we go to the commissioner, have these people in the camps been sensitized enough to actually entertain the census officials when they come to count them?
This is happening at a time that we have, the entire political process. So the consciousness is there. And you know, Governor Zulum is very educated. He's somebody who takes a lot of things. Actually, the governor leads all advocacies, whether for census, whether for elections. The governor, as you know, hardly stays in Maiduguri. He's always across local government areas. And wherever the governor is, he meets with stakeholders, community leaders, all kinds of people, and then he leads the advocacy. So the people of Borno are sensitized, but of course I know in every society there would always be more, to be done. Luckily, there is still a bit more time, but the governor leads the advocacy and will continue to build on what the governor is doing.
Well, let me bring in Abimbola Saluhudeyin, who is a Federal Commissioner of the National Population Commission for Lagos State, also right there with you in our Abuja studio. Thanks for joining us this morning, madam. Well, good morning, yeah. One could say that you have your job cut out for you. Of course, you've been here on this program a few times to educate Nigerians, to sensitize people about this entire process. How far so far, madam? Okay, well, I guess we'll come back. We'll come back to you, madam. But let me stay with you for a moment, Mr. Gusau. So this is what we have now, and all of that. Now you said that the governor leads all advocacies. How informed would you say the people are, and how expectant? Because I mean, even though, as you say, this is coming at about the same time as the electoral process, sensitization about the NPC. Well, the population census started a very long time ago. So how well informed, how aware would you say the residents are from your experience, not just as a government official, if I can dare say that, but in terms of sensitization, in terms of awareness, in terms of word of mouth from people to people, if you can get any feel from the people, how well aware would you say the people are?
Well, I can barely hear you. I didn't hear all that you were saying, so
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Mr. Gusau? Okay, well, you can't hear me, but you could hear her. Maybe you could hear it.
Can you hear me, Mr. Gusau?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Mr. Gusau?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. His question was, you said that the governor led all the advocacy. So how prepared would you say that the people are for this exercise?
I would like to first of all say Happy New Year to you channels and to Nigerians. And as I welcome us to the 2023 digital census. This is the year of the digital census. I must say, first of all, that as for preparedness on our part, the Commission has put all hands on deck. Channels has been following up. We've been talking several times. I've been here on several occasions, and we really appreciate what you're doing. For the advocacy, we like to be very honest. We also know that a lot of Nigerians are yet to understand what we want to do. Some have heard about census, but they don't even know what. But we would recall that last week, Mr. President actually made a proclamation and said that the census will now hold 29th of March. It starts on the 29th of March. Enumeration will start 29th of March, and it's for 5 days. So this has made it to be more, on our part, we found this a lot of pressure again so that Nigerians can understand and know that the census is coming up. I'm also aware, and I remember very well, that channels, particularly my brother, you've always taken us up on the fact that many people haven't heard. But let me say this, we have actually been working hard on advocacy, and we've improved a lot on it. But don't forget that why it doesn't appear that we are doing so much, like you would say about the elections, is one, election in Nigeria is a big deal. What I mean by that is everybody is interested. And the periodicity of elections is 4 years, and it does not fail. So any child born in the last 4 years would understand by the time he's 5 years that there's going to be an election. Census is yet to have a fixed periodicity. And because census is yet to have a fixed periodicity, it should be 10 years. Now, the last census we had was 2006. This is 17 years now. Majority of the Nigerian population, we have a very youthful population. They are youths. Imagine about 70% of them, 17 years ago, were either toddlers or maybe really don't understand what census is. So if you're talking about it now, we need to go extra mile to really make people to be much more conscious. But we're really doing our best, and I want to assure you, we intend to do much more. And maybe I shouldn't be the one to say this, but I'll say it. Even why I'm in Abuja is because of this. It is an emergency meeting that we must increase our tempo in the area of advocacy. And we've targeted all TV stations, particularly channels that have been our lead voice, and we're so grateful. So we will be reaching out to you with jingles, with adverts, with more talks like these, much more advocacy, so that everybody living in Nigeria would know that the census is on the 29th of March. It starts on the 29th of March and would run for 5 days. Because you know, unlike elections, census is an all-inclusive. When a child is born on the morning of the census, that child must be counted. Whether the child is born yesterday, the child must be counted. It's not like elections where you count 18 and where only 18 and above vote. This one is the entire nation that must be counted, and we intend to ensure that everybody is counted. And that's why for the first time, again, another reason why people still don't understand this kind of census is this is the first time Nigeria will be having a digital census. And so we need to also educate Nigerians more on what a digital census entails. We also know it's a big challenge. And I can assure you we're doing our very best. All hands are on deck. And every Nigerian will be counted. That's what I want to say for now.
Well,
in Lagos State.
Just 1 second, madam. When you say digital census, that suggests to the average person that a lot of technology is going to be deployed. For the purpose of understanding, please let Nigerians know what you mean when you say it's a digital census, meaning a lot of technology will be employed. What does that mean? What are the things Nigerians must expect when you come to do the count?
Thank you very much. We mean digital census is, as the name stands, digital. Technology is being employed now to make sure that our job is easier and that accuracy is achieved. Because we all know that with technology, accuracy is easily and better achieved because analog gives room for a lot of things. But with technology, it's easier to achieve accuracy. This time, we'll be having a completely paperless census. We'll be coming to people's houses with what we call the personal digital assistant, which is like an iPhone or an Android phone. On that particular the PDA, let me shorten it, we have the map of each local government, each locality, each area. Every street name is there, every house is there, everything you want to see on a map is on that PDA that is just like what I'm holding. And when we get to the house, all the questions that we're going to ask you are on the PDA. So what the enumerator does is to open the PDA, and because on the PDA it is noted the enumerator is in Channels Television Abuja, not Channels Lagos. So the enumerator cannot be in Channels Abuja and lie to us that he's in Channels Lagos, because on the PDA it has been geofenced. That is part of the digitalization we did during the enumeration area demarcation. So he now opens his PDA after the usual pleasantries that we have taught our enumerators to do, to ask after people's welfare. Then he goes straight to the point. He takes the questions as they are on the PDA. And as they answer, the answers are imputed immediately on the PDA. And as soon as it finishes with a particular respondent, it is sent to the cloud, to the server. From the server, it goes to the cloud. So you can be sure that there will be manipulation is minimally reduced. This is what digital census simply means. That this time, there is no writing, there is no, I've written Abimbola. No, she's not Abimbola, she's actually Bolanle. Please correct it. No. Once you have given your information, it is at a distance, and we send it to the national server. From there, it goes onto the cloud, where it is stored. And then later, when we finish, results are collated and then announced to Nigerians.
Mrs. Ndeng, what happened to those deep, deep, deep interiors that do not have internet? How will they send the information to the cloud?
Very much. For those interiors, they can also work offline. That's how the PDA has been constructed. They can work offline. When they get to where there is internet, then they can upload it. That's how it is done. We are also aware of this, and we are conscious of that. And that's why the PDA has been designed to work both offline and online. And then you get to where there is internet, where there is service, then you can then upload.
Between collecting the information and getting to where there's a connection, can't the information be manipulated?
Can the information be? That's all I heard.
Manipulated.
No, I did say to you that when we collect your information, because it's not in writing anymore, it is as it says that we punch it into our PDA. Once we do that, it is sent to the server. It can no longer come back to, not even the enumerator can retrieve it. Nobody can, except at the time we want to begin to analyze and then give us the details. Because it's already in the cloud.
Well, let me ask you this. The last time, if memory serves me right, we had papered census, if I'm going to use the word you used earlier. There was some parallel activities of some state governments, case in point, Lagos State at the time. Is there any chance that such a thing would be allowed this time or would happen, where state officials will go pari passu with federal officials to do the counts?
I think that quite clearly, but I want to assume what you're asking is, during the last census, is that what you said, that we had some state officials working with our commission officials on the field? Is that what you said?
Yes.
And will there be such a...
Yes. Is that going to happen this time around?
That's what you said. Let me say this. Census is completely a local-based activity. It is localized all the time. And that is why in every state, we have been talking to the governors, the legislators, the state owners, all the stakeholders in every state, that they must be involved. In fact, we have instructions, and that's what we're doing. All our enumerators will be sourced locally based on local government that they live. Because you know, during census, there will be no movement. So everything we're doing is local. That's why we're talking to the royal fathers, we're talking to faith-based organizations, we're talking to physically challenged organizations, we're talking to market women, we're talking to legislators, the government, everybody, so that the persons we're training as enumerators, because we started training some people, we started training some supervisors, we're training some we call CAPI and all that. We're ensuring that our enumerators will not come from anywhere except the state they are residing in. It is purely local. Everything about the census is local. We cannot import anybody. Everything is local, and that is what we're doing this time.
Concerned, madam, about internally displaced persons, as some people were, going by some of the questions that my colleague here asked Mr. Gusau earlier.
I only heard you up to going by the question your colleague asked, and I didn't hear a question. So please, can you repeat it?
Are you as concerned as well about internally displaced persons, as my colleague here asked Mr. Gusau earlier?
Very much, we are. And we showed a lot of that concern during the enumeration area demarcation. And I can tell you, when I was acting chairman of the commission, had actually visited Borno State due to this kind of condition that they have. And my colleague from Borno State, the commissioner representing Borno State at the commission, is also doing a lot on the IDPs. What we have decided to do in our questionnaire to aid people to put their mind at rest, and to also, especially for those who are, because IDP too, they're also migrants. And you know that Lagos State, my state, also has a lot of migrants. We have been talking about census migration, that it is a very negative and bad thing for data. So what we have done in our question this time, we have decided to be proactive. We have included states of origin, so that if you're an IDP from Borno State and you've been moved to Abuja, we will count you in Abuja as a resident of Abuja, but in the questionnaire, your state of origin is also stated. And so that's why I'm also appealing to the Lagosians who usually move out to the east, to Kwara, to anywhere during census, that they don't need to risk their lives. Because if your governor wants to know how many of these people are in Lagos State, the questionnaire also reveals how many of you are there. But we must be able to say how many of us are actually residing in Lagos State at this point in time, so that proper policies can be formulated to aid better living of the people of Lagos State. That is the essence of census. And that's why we don't want even the IDPs to move anywhere. But if we get to any IDP camp, they will be duly counted, and we'll ask them what is their state of origin. We're not going to record them under their state of origin, but the fact will be there for the governor to get at the end of the census and know what he wants to plan for his people. And for those who are migrants into Lagos because they're looking for greener pasture, they're looking for better lives, we're also assuring them when we count them, because it is stated that from Anambra, they are from Ogun, from Kwara, from Kano, their governors who would also know that he has people in Lagos. Because you know Lagos is where everybody comes to. It is a country within a country. There is no Nigerian that doesn't have a relation in Lagos, or doesn't have a friend, or does not intend to come to Lagos, or has not heard about Lagos. So we are aware of this, and this is what the commission has done now. We will put people's state of origin in the question that we're asking them.
Mr. Sunday, how are you able to sieve foreigners out of this exercise? For instance, if I'm from Ghana, and I'm a bike rider in Lagos, if I want to claim to be a Nigerian, it would be easy if all I have to do is fill my state of origin. I can just select any state and just put there and claim to be a Nigerian.
As part of our questions under the questionnaire, we also ask where you are from, apart from the state of origin. We also ask where you're born. It's also important. And then we ask your parents and all that. All these questions, when we've asked them, by the time we begin to analyze, we'll be able to know those who are Nigerians and those who are not Nigerians. The questions have taken care of all this. Our questions are over 70. So you can see, we have taken care of every demographic factor that would help us give the best data to our government so that they can plan better for this country and for the private sector to be able to use in carrying out their businesses as well.
70 questions, isn't that cumbersome? $70 questions, wouldn't that be cumbersome?
Well, it is not cumbersome. We have also checked the timing, and we're also working on, if we find the timing too much, we would increase the enumerators. That's what we're going to do. If we thought we were going to use 10 enumerators for a particular enumeration area, and we found out that they might not be able to finish it, we would have to increase, and would have to ask the federal government to give us more money to do this. Because the truth is, census is a highly financially consuming project. And without this mother of all data, no nation can improve or develop. The only way a nation can have incremental sustainable development is to have accurate demographic data. So our data is special. The federal government must not shy away from giving us enough money to carry out this onerous duty for the benefit of everybody, residents in this country, particularly Nigerians, that we all want better lives for ourselves. It is important. It's quite expensive, but it is possible with the right motives and the right infrastructure. This is the truth about it.
Well, still on the 70 questions matter. How many minutes would each person you're enumerating have to stay with your officials? Each enumeration should take about how many minutes per person?
Now, each enumeration is taking about 20 minutes, depending on who it is. Depending, you know what I mean by depending. There are people you get to, they can answer your questions easily and faster. There are people you'd have to explain to, and that is why we have also translated these questions in major languages, and we're encouraging other states to translate into those languages that are within their states. In Lagos State, the governor is ensuring that these are translated into Egun language, into Awori, before that date, and then we would educate our people on these questions so that by the time we get to them, it is not new, and they can easily understand and answer these questions. It takes about 20 minutes, and that is where we're using a lot of enumerators. Recall we did say that this census project is also an opportunity to give employment to our youth. No state is taking, every state is taking thousands and thousands of ad hoc staff during this period. We're engaging them and giving them jobs at this time. We need quite a lot of people. It is a manpower that will be huge. The questions cannot be reduced if you must get the right answers that the government and private sector must work with to give every one of us better lives. Well, we cannot reduce the questions, but we would increase.
Okay. Yeah, that leads me to this follow-up. When you say that the states have, you know, some roles to play, that the states are the ones doing the translation and all of that, what other assignments or tasks are there for states to take on for this process, this census project, and how engaged are they so far? What kind of feedback have you been getting from the state governments?
The state governments actually are the owners of the census. Because, you know, I did say that census is purely a local activity. And census involves everybody. It's an all-inclusive activity. It is not like elections or any other thing. It concerns a child born that second we enter the house. If a child is born during census period, if an enumerator enumerates Channel TV today, Abuja, and assuming Channel TV Lagos is next to Channel TV, during that same period of enumeration, you have left Abuja channels, and you hear that a child is born within the same enumeration period, you must come back to that house and take the details of that child and register that child, because that child is born during census. It is this important. And that's what we've been telling state governments. They must own the process. They must own the process. It's a national project, but it's their process, it's their project, because this is what will also help our state governments to plan better and also be able to know what they need, even from the federal government. And state governments, because we're engaging local people, they have a role to play. All the local government chairmen must also be at their duty post. We don't know all the local people. The state governments must be willing to help us, to give us their local people who would be able to work more effectively within those areas, since there will be no movement on that day. Because there is no point we just say anybody should apply, and somebody in Abuja applies to work in Lagos and you can't come into Lagos. Or even within Lagos, let me take Lagos. You are living in Surulere and we post you to Ikeja, you cannot go. Even within that same Lagos, if you're living in Ikate and we post you to another part of Surulere local government, you might not be able to go. That's how complex Lagos State is. So the governments of every state, especially Lagos State government, must be completely involved. And I'm really happy to say that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has to be an excellent, he has also shown he's leading an excellent state and is an excellent governor. For census, he has been very, very concerned. The governor will discuss census up to 2 a.m. with members. He is so interested, and he knows Lagos is not so happy with census results in the past. So this time, they want to get it right, and I'm happy that they are very much involved, and they would get it right this time by the grace of God.
Mr. Gusau? Mr. Gusau, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Peculiarly in the north, many people are itinerant. And let's be specific about Borno now. You say that there has been a lot of sensitization.
Yes.
How are those itinerant farmers and herders going to be counted?
Well, you know, every situation sometimes comes opportunity. The unfortunate insurgency has brought about some specialized opportunities for Borno in the sense that we have all kinds of non-governmental organizations and a lot of the activities have added to the local awareness, in Borno State. Like I started by saying, Governor Zulum has made a lot of work easier indirectly for the National Population Commission in the sense that his resettlement drive has been very aggressive. A lot of people are back to communities. More than 20 communities have been resettled, which makes it a lot easier. And then a lot of people, including the IDPs, are really involved because of humanitarian activities. For instance, even in terms of how we allocate food items, for instance, there are normally cards that are given to people before they are given food. There's a retrieval process. There are a lot of processes that a lot of people have become used to. So, and I'm very sure that the National Population Commission is going to benefit from it. But the fact of the matter is that the issue of census is something that the advocacy would have to be continued. But we know that in Borno, we have had the peculiar challenge of losing a lot of population. A lot of people were killed. But of course, there has been a lot of mass reproduction. A lot of, even within the IDP counts, a lot of women have given birth. There's mass reproduction. And then the governor leads the advocacy. Wherever the governor finds himself, because he's always on top of local government areas, two things that he has always hammered on are the issue of voter participation and the issue of the upcoming census. And I can assure you that very soon there's going to be another mass mobilization in the sense that stakeholders from local government areas will be sent to their local government areas to go and do more aggressive sensitization. Governor Zulum is somebody who is extraordinarily committed. The NPC will be in the best position to tell you that he has given all kinds of support to the NPC at the level of Borno State, and the engagement will continue. His commitment will only increase. Look, the issue of census is political, unfortunately. Every state wants to have a high population. Of course, I believe that's why the NPC is ensuring accuracy to ensure that there are no political manipulation of figures. But the governors, the political actors, they know that every state wants to have a good population, but of course it has to be accurate. I will tell you, in Borno State, beyond politics, Governor Zulum knows that the accuracy of population is very important for policy formulation, for virtually all the policies of government. He takes it very seriously, and by the special grace of God, we will get it very, very, very right.
The mass reproduction, I don't understand what you mean by that, and I'd like you to explain, particularly when you now add, just one second, particularly when you now add the fact that you believe the issue of census is political. Every state wants to have a high population. So I don't understand, all of that mix.
What I'm saying, if you go back to even the issue of Lagos, when there was a dispute in terms of perception between what population, which of the states had the highest number of population, there was really a dispute between Kano and Lagos. Basically, that was why Lagos had to do its own census. So it's something that we have to accept. Every state wants to be seen as having a high population because the population determines a lot of things, including the state allocation and things like that. And now the point I'm trying to bring is that I'm bringing two extreme scenarios in the case of Borno. Of course, we know that the Boko Haram has led to a lot of killings. that we are not sure of the figure. Official statistics will tell you about what 20, 30,000, but we know more than 100,000 or far more have been killed. But I'm also saying that within the period of the Boko Haram insurgency, there have been a lot of bats, even in the IDP camps. If you go to the statistics of the UN, if you were to consider statistics of the UN and other humanitarian organizations, they will tell you there have been many cases of child bats in the IDP camps and even in host communities. Some of them are as a result of the fact that people are confined, to one particular location where a man and a family is there, they don't do anything, and then the next you have, is the issues of bats. So there have been many cases of bats in across Borno State. So I wouldn't be surprised as to the number of population that you may end up seeing in Borno State. And this is not only peculiar to Borno, it's peculiar to many places, particularly low literate communities.
Okay, well, Mr.
So
just one second, because we're running out of time.
Two extreme situations.
My apologies, my sincere apologies for butting in, because we're running out of time. Well, if you want to, could you speak to some of the issues that Mrs. Salu Hunde, right beside you there, raised when she said that there is the appeal to state governors to embrace the process as their own. You're saying that Governor Zulum isn't opposed. If anything, he's actually very supportive. I don't know if it is something you would say is across board, because I know that Borno State at least has some neighboring states as well. What kind of body language would you say the NPC could be getting from other state governments around in terms of this census, especially because we want it to be as accurate as possible?
I think it largely depends on the commissioner representing a particular state. Some commissioners are more committed than than others. So basically, I don't know if your question is meant for Madam or for
it's
me.
for you.
But,
it's for you.
Just before I move to her, I will tell you it depends on the commitment of a particular commissioner. Okay, for you.
Thank you very much. I must say, first of all, before I answer that question, I'd like to correct my brother's impression given to the public that census is a political exercise. Census is not a political exercise. It is an economic activity to aid the development of any country. That's number one point. The number two thing he did say here that I also would like to correct the impression before the public is that it was the political part of it that made Lagos to go to court during the last census because Kano was ahead of Lagos. No, sir. What happened was Lagos went to court because Lagos believed it had that population. And I must say here, it's on record that Lagos won on each aspect that it went to court. Unfortunately, and I repeat, as a member of the commission, with due respect to our laws, the law regarding census taking in Nigeria does not make room for a recount. It's not like election where they say this election has not been properly carried out and then you can go back and have a re-election. In census affairs, we're not allowed to have at least a statistical recount. If we were allowed, Lagos having been adjudged, the case having been won in its favor, that they won, there should have been a recount, but there is no recount. So we leave that as that. But I must say, right here to everybody listening, census is an economic activity. So we must all embrace it if we want to grow in our country. If you want development for our nation, it is an economic activity. Obviously, it affects every spectrum of our lives, that I know, and I must be honest. And then I can go to your question, my brother. And that is, from the meeting I told you, which was an emergency meeting that we've been having, and that's why I'm in Abuja now. Every commissioner had opportunity to state how their state governors or state government have been perceiving and have been participating in the census, in the preparations.
Thank
you.
I
must say
Thank you, Mrs. Abimbola Salu Hunde, Federal Commissioner, National Population Census for Lagos State. I'm sorry I have to cut you short, but we've run completely out of time. We also had a spokesman to the Borno State Governor, Issa Gusau, both of whom joined us from our studio in Abuja. We wish Nigeria luck through the census period. And Mrs. Hunde, you have your work cut out, so all the best. Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Do stay with us.
I'm going to go be your friend. I tell the Lord go be your friend. I tell the God go be your guy. Amen. 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 Go be your guy. Abdul Samad go be my guy. Rabbi, you go be my guy.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. This is one of my most fun topics because, okay, for instance, according to the latest data, an estimated 244 million children and youth worldwide are not in school.
Mind-boggling figure.
Exactly. 763 million young people and adults are illiterate, and fewer than 5% of the population aged 15 plus participate in adult education in almost 1/3 of countries across the globe. The right to education is being, present continuous, violated. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, says without inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong opportunities for all, countries will not succeed in anything. They will not succeed in achieving gender equality and breaking the cycle of poverty that is leaving millions of Nigerians, millions of children, youth and adults behind. Of course, you are not unaware of the figures, some of the figures in Nigeria. 20 million on the average, depending on whose data you're looking at, are said to be out of school across Nigeria. But in Lagos State, the government is making it a priority to develop education as part of efforts to achieve the goal. The governor of the state took a bold step last year by getting the approval to launch 2 more universities. Let's get more on that from Tokunbo Wahab, who is Special Advisor to Governor Sanwo-Olu on education. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's use the funnel approach, because education is about research, right?
Yes.
And people always talk about the funnel. So those figures are definitely concerning. 244 million children and youth worldwide, 763 young people and adults illiterate. That must be a concern to anyone in the education space, especially because...
It should be a concern to everybody. Okay. It should be a concern to everybody. And that is why this governor and his deputy made it a priority. The priority goes just beyond getting 2 new universities after 40 years with a ballooning population. As in 1984, when they had LASU, or 83, 84, population was barely 6 million. And then the UN report was that by the year 2010, 80% of the jobs that will be available will be for university graduates. Now you have just 1 university. I will give you 3 faculties or 3 courses in LASU: law, medicine, and dentistry. For law, you can't admit more than 150, and when you have over 5,000 applicants. For medicine, you can't do more than 100. And then for dentistry, you can only do 10. 10, yes, in LASU. Now, 10, just 10. I'm giving you raw data. You can only admit 10 for dentistry. Now, that is for LASU, our Primus University. And then you have applicants that range between 15, 20,000 yearly. So when they fail to admit them, where do you think they go to? They go back home. They become idle. They become restless.
They're on the streets.
They're on the streets. And they become a danger to every one of us. Now, when this government came in, we've seen the figures. We had 2 colleges of education, one for primary education, one for the regular conventional college of education. And then we have a polytechnic. Let me start with the colleges. The colleges both have a subvention of about 550 million every month. and then they have a student enrollment that is less than 4,000. That means we're training one child with 500 annually. And then you have a dwindling because NEC is no more, NCE is no more attractive. And the UN report already stated that. So what do we have to do? The governor, being futuristic, said, look, let us be very proactive. Proactive in the sense that let us ensure we get a University of Education that will be specialized. We are doing so much investment in education. Let there be a platform to train these teachers. Hence, the idea of having a University of Education. And I'm proud to say the first set of students will be matriculating on Monday. Now, on the other hand, we have a polytechnic. We also know about the dichotomy between these HND holders and university graduates. Even in the civil service, you come with your HND. The peak you can get to is level 14, except you do a conversion that makes you become a full director, and then you can become a permanent secretary, which is the icing on the cake for every civil servant. So we say, what do we do here? Let us make this a University of Science and Tech. And very audacious, the governor, the deputy, and most especially the members of the House, where you have the Right Honorable Speaker buy into that vision with the other 39 members to pass the law. And today we have those 2 universities. We have vice chancellors in place, we have the lecturers in place, and I'm glad to say they are on course. But let me go back to what you said. How did we get here? How did we get to a position where we're struggling to give access for quality education to our pupils? That's a question we all must ask ourselves. Where did the elites drop the ball? In the 50s, 60s, you must go to school. The sage from the West, Awolowo, made it very clear, free and compulsory, that you must send your words to school. And that is why the generation that are in their 80s, 70s today had access to education. So how did the elites drop the ball in a way that the people that vote them in every cycle of election don't have proper access to education? That is the question we must ask ourselves.
I do beg your pardon. You keep saying the elites dropped the ball.
Yes.
The problem, as I see it, is that the population was growing, but facilities were not growing as much as the population was growing.
Auntie, it's about planning.
So it's not the elite, it is the ruling class, and there's a difference.
You see, Auntie Alero, the elites, the ruling class are intertwined. There's a meeting point.
There is a difference.
There's a meeting point.
I may be an elite, but I'm not in the ruling class.
But you have access to them.
I'm in no position to determine how many schools there will be in Lagos State.
Let me give you an example, Auntie Alero. We have over 1,900 public schools in Lagos State. 1,009, and we're building more. Interestingly, under this Governor Sanwo-Olu and his deputy, we've had also cause to open up a space that either was never existing. And I am glad to say my commissioner, that's Mr. Adefisayo, drove the process that let us have comprehensive schools. It's not all these kids that have the tendency to go full hog in the education system, especially at the secondary level. If you have the gift to use your hand, go for the comprehensive. That's what's there before. But they never drove that process. Now, we have over 50 comprehensive schools across Lagos State. Now, this will complement our technical colleges across the divisions.
I was just going to ask you about technical colleges.
No,
are there any in the pipeline?
No, we have. Lagos have about 11, but it's not enough. So we now use the comprehensive colleges to complement them. So most of our big schools now have a comprehensive college embedded in the system.
Okay. Well, Mr. Wahab, perhaps we should back up a little to effects of these processes over the years, even before the Sanwo-Olu government came into play. I mean, you said the other time something about what we needed to do and all. The Constitution is very clear.
Yes.
In 18.3, I'm sure you're aware, that a government shall strive to eradicate illiteracy, and to this end, government shall, as and when applicable, provide free, compulsory, and universal primary education, free secondary education, free university education, and free adult literacy program. because government has to eradicate illiteracy. Now, so how would you say, how well would you say we are doing in that regard?
I will speak for Lagos.
Using Lagos State.
Yes, I will speak for Lagos across board. For primary, for secondary, it's free. Tuition free till date.
Primary
and secondary. The only place where they pay tuition is not even tuition, it's for boarding. Our model colleges where you have boarding facilities in place.
There have been questions, and I'm sure you're aware of those questions, about the quality of that free education. There are those who are wondering, okay, on the one hand, the quality of teachers. This is not to say that the government isn't doing enough, but speak to the quality of the teachers. And I know you can probably only speak for public school. I'm coming to the landing of the question. But you have to also, because it is government. Government is also responsible for ensuring that whether it's primary or public or private, the quality of education is standard. That's one. Secondly, speak to the quality of facilities, whether they're in rural, suburban, or urban Lagos.
Thank you very much. Now, let me start with, my chain of thought was a bit disrupted. I was telling you about what we have in place in Lagos. Yeah. Free qualitative education. And the state government, since the time of Ashiwaju, have been paying for the WAEC fees across the state. Now, we now have an agency called Agency for Mass Education. That's for adult literacy, strictly speaking. And what it does is, if you miss the bus to know how to read and write years ago, the door is still open. It's never shut at you. And that is an agency that we are driving the process and is doing very well across the state, with over 157 centers across the state. Now, in between this, we now have our technical colleges. We now have our comprehensive colleges. Is this enough for a 22 million growing population? I will tell you no. However, what we're doing is we're opening up the space to grant access. That's a key word under UNESCO report, access for quality education. That now takes you to your question of the quality of teachers. Why did you think the governor said we should go and have a University of Education? I'll give you raw data. In Lagos State and Naira, we have over 18,000 private schools. About maybe 12, 13,000 are unregistered or not registrable. Yes. Now we have an office under the Ministry of Education called Education Quality Assurance Office. That office is meant to grant them access and create a standard to register them, so we can have the data on them. That is the sole purpose of having that office in the first place. So we're not just looking the other way. We're saying to you that, okay, you want to set up a private school, for instance. There's a minimum standard you must have in place. You must be deliberate in your approach. You must have maybe this size of space for sports, for classrooms, for leisure and everything.
Mr. Wahab,
yes,
I'm sorry to break this.
Let me land.
But you know, you said something troubling.
Let me land. So if these things are in place, all we have to do is set that standard for them, and we're doing that. The office is in place. The office goes around the state. The office just have offices across the 57 LGs and LCDAs. So it's not about the government not pushing or driving this process. And continuously, the Office of Quality Assurance also engages the private school owners through different associations that they set up for themselves. The high class, the medium, and the low end private schools.
Okay. It is very troubling when you say there are 12,000 unregistered or unregistrable private schools in Lagos.
Look, Lagos is a big city. Let us call a spade a spade. That is a fact. That is the data I'm giving you. It used to be like 18 or 19,000, but in the past 3.5 years, we've closed down. We've moved some of them to register them. At a point, I know I had a conversation with the DG, and she said they have to start opening up the space. Okay, if you have this, come in first. Whilst we'll give you a window to go and put this and this in place. So that's why the number had reduced, and it's an ongoing conversation.
So how, okay, go ahead.
But Mr. Wahab,
yes.
Once upon a time, schools made a big thing of putting on their signboard, government approved. So what happened that 13,000 were able to open up schools, because I see some nursery schools that are on first floors of building. And I say a nursery school is where children go to play. But I don't see any space for playing, but somebody is operating a creche on the first floor of a building. Who approved this? But they have signboards. So what's happening to Lagos State Inspection?
Most of them are being closed down on a daily basis. You see, it also talks about our values as a people. I want to set up a system. I am going to do it my own way or the highway. That is a question. Why are we like this? It's like a man that drives against traffic. Is it right in the first place to want to drive against traffic? You want to set up a school to impact knowledge, impact values. And for all you care, I will just set it up without caring for the well-being of those pupils that are coming in there. And then, how about those persons that take their kids there? But for us, we won't blame. We'll keep doing the work. We'll keep improving on it. We'll keep shutting them down as we approach them.
Okay. So this is where we are now, and perhaps a number of people might also be very curious about, my colleague asked you about technical education.
Yes.
And you also spoke about polytechnics. The assumption over the years has been that polytechnics are supposed to do something completely different from universities. In terms of function for Lagos State government, you know, the wing of which you also work in, which is education, what would you say are the things responsible for the erosion of the primary functions of polytechnics and perhaps by extension technical education, and how are we readdressing it?
Honestly, I think it's about we as a people. We are certificate centric as a people. There's this notion amongst us that if it's not a university certificate, it's not a university certificate, which was why I had to give the example of our public service. Over the years, the government had been making pronouncements, doing policies that you can't discriminate, for instance, between a BSc holder and the HND holder. But has it ever been implemented? I'm coming.
Okay.
Let me just land on this. So, over the years also, people started taking the university option to seek knowledge and leaving the polytechnic option or the college's option. I will now give you a practical example. If you want to write your UME, for instance, that's JAMB. The best students are assigned to the universities. Best students are for the universities. Second best for the polytechnics. And then the last set are meant to go to colleges of education to go and be teachers. This is from JAMB policy. I didn't set up that policy as a person, but that is the reality of what we're dealing with. Now, how would your worst in an exam be taken to the colleges to be teachers? What kind of teachers are you going to produce? These are questions we should ponder about.
Okay. Now, in that light, I also believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I would like you to speak to the function of each of those classes of tertiary education. Yes. What were supposed to be the functions of the technical education? Because I remember the technical education in Oyo State, for instance, they trained technicians, so to speak. That's my understanding. Yes. I hope I'm right. Polytechnics had their own functions as well, you know, which was supposed to be more of functional education, something that you lived function, the technical, technical or polytechnics, you just go start a small business or something. That's my assumption. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then universities are theorists, academicians, and all of that. So for Lagos State government, what infrastructure supports the technical schools that you have, such that when they graduate, they can get in there and begin to work some things out? What infrastructure are there to support the graduates of the polytechnics as well? Okay.
Now, for the technical colleges, they have their workshop and they have everything in place. And once they graduate, we always give them access to our Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. That is the sole purpose, most times. grant them access to credit facilities, single-digit interest rates, to set up their own business. It's still there. It's doing very well for them. For the Polytechnic, why did we convert it to University of Science and Tech? It's still within the same line, but making it more of a specialized university now for science and technology, and let it be more research-driven for our development. We have a real project going on, for instance. Where are we going to get those experts from that system? Already there is a functional faculty of transportation in that system. And then we are going to give them access to work from our own end. Don't also forget, the government should just provide the enabling environment, not to be an employer of labor. But there are instances where the government will have to be an off-taker. Like where we have a project like the rail project, which is what we're doing. And it's a massive project on the two most important lines for us, the blue and then the red lines. Moving people from Ebute-Metta to Agbado, that's something kilometers. Moving people from Outer Marina to Okoko, 27 kilometers. They will need hands. In the initial stage, those are fixed it, the Chinese will work. But it gets to a point, the knowledge, the expertise must be localized. And that's what we're doing.
Mr. Wahab, don't you think that we as a people need a complete
reorientation?
Yes, because now artisans that we use in Nigeria are mainly foreigners. Yes. You want to build a house, for instance, your carpentry work is done by a Ghanaian, your POP work is done by somebody from Togo or from Cotonou, you know. And these are things that Nigerians can do, but we don't want to do it. We want to go and get university degree. I keep using this example. I personally know an architect who has been our guest on this program many times, who threw away his certificate and went into plumbing. He is now a professional plumber. And he tells me that he's making more money from plumbing than from being an architect. Because he finds that most of the buildings in Ikoyi and VI, the plumbing has been done wrongly, and he's now being contracted to come and correct them. But my brother will be ashamed to be called a plumber.
I talked about ethical reorientation. When was the last time we heard about a city and guild exams, for instance? In the 70s.
Which was big in those days.
In those days.
Yes.
If you had a C&G, you were made.
good to go.
Yeah.
In developed climes, plumbers, artisans make so much money.
In fact,
and they are respected.
You'd best go and learn how to do your own plumbing yourself. Because you can't pay them because they charge you per hour.
That's why DIY is popular over there.
So for me, we have to go back to the drawing board in whatever we're doing with our education policy. And that's what this governor, Sanwo-Olu, is driving at. Let us create more comprehensive colleges. We have 50 in place now. We ramp up the number in the next 4 years by the grace of God to maybe 200 or thereabout. Those kids that are not very good academically, let them have
good with their hands.
Yes. And that's what we're doing. Catering, hairdressing, carpentry, plumbing, and we're seeing the results. Now, you see, when you invest in education, people should understand you have to be very patient. In the past 3.5 years, this government has ramped up investment in education, and the results are trickling in different ways. For instance, for his primary, he said, I want to have a standardized primary education system where teachers across the state will have the same platform. Using the Eco Excel platform, is computerized, to teach. You can monitor them. You can say, by 8 o'clock, if you are not plugged into your class, they will know at a centralized data center that you are not there across the state. And the curriculum is the same. Then for the secondary, he used TESCOM to say, if you don't have a background in education, for instance, you can't be a teacher in Lagos. For the past 3 years, that is standard. You must have a background in you must have a teaching background. Not that teaching has become ayaba, technically speaking, that I'm looking for a job, I studied banking, I want to go and teach.
What is Ayaba?
I stumbled on it. No, you can't stumble on teaching. It's a deliberate profession.
But
now,
to get that, the remuneration also has to be improved
that's where I'm going to.
So that those who have a flair for teaching
that is where I'm going
know
to.
that they will get something
That's
out
where I'm going to. And in the past 3 years, it's been doing award for teachers, rewarding them with vehicles, SUVs, regular cars, allowances, incentives, and we've seen the results. The result from Lagos State, WAEC, moved from 39% to 84%.
84?
84, including maths and English. This is not rocket science. It's a deliberate approach and investment in education. Oh, it's also deliberate to tell you that LASU's profile had grown. For those that know LASU, 10 years ago, it was the heaven for courtism. But there's a deliberate culture to say, no, it's a place for knowledge and excellence. It's a university. It's a universe of knowledge. And today, LASU is being ranked globally because there's a deliberate approach to deliberately invest in knowledge, human and capital infrastructure by this same governor. And what have we done differently? We said, students, lecturers must have peace on campuses. Yesterday, it was not our own initiative for the students across the state to say, look, during COVID, this governor deployed LMS, Learning Management System. None of our schools had disruption in academic calendar. They went for NYSC on point. When ASU was on strike, when this governor came in 2019, looked ahead, he's been in a staff before as a commissioner, labor-related issues on top of it. He said, look, what are the issues that increase subvention for all of them, first line payment charge, allow them to have their autonomy. And today, investing so much in their infrastructure, today they are ranking LASU as one of the best in the country. Okay. So for me, we also have to be deliberate in our approach. I've said it severally, investing in education is the way to go. We are doing that. Are we there yet? No. Don't also forget, people coming to Lagos every day. They come to stay. People coming every day, they come to stay. The Lagos of 3 years ago is different now. Just stay here. The entrance of these channels, it's them coming. And where are they going into? We set up the last try to say, let us take a register of all our residents. Let us have a data of you so we can plan for you. If, for instance, we're saying to ourselves, we went to Etiosa, between a community and the other, no school, and we had to build a world-class school for them. It was a deliberate plan because there was a need for it, and by this governor. We said to ourselves, oh, we have our students, they are going in numbers, the economy is not looking so good. We increased their bursary by 100%. It's also a deliberate approach by this governor.
Okay, let me take you back, rewind. Yes. Let's go back to the beginning, the primary school.
Yes.
Where I believe that a lot is taught to a child. A child's character is formed at that stage. Why do you think that there are so many out-of-school children?
Different reasons.
Okay, one.
Now, when the dislocation in the Northeast started, most people were not looking at it. UN was already flagging it. When dislocation started with the Boko Haram incidents over the past 10 years, those kids were just being armed on a truck and they're moving them south. South to do what?
Beg.
To beg. For survival. That's the economic leg of it.
Okay.
Thrown out by a social dislocation from one extreme of the country. And Lagos is a sub-national, don't forget that. We can't tell people not to come in. So that accounts for a lot of those numbers that people are talking about. And it goes beyond Lagos. Wherever there is peace, in a wartime situation, people move to, they gravitate to those areas. Now there's dislocation in the Eastern European bloc. People are moving to the western part of Europe. At the point last year, the UK had to suspend visa applications from some parts of the world to attend to Ukrainian applicants. It's deliberate. So those numbers apparently were thrown up by those dislocations up north. Two, the economic situation. I've had cause to park and ask questions of these kids that sell on the streets. Some of them are breadwinners for their families, realistically. Yeah, in those days growing up also, they were like that. But the difference is, in those days, they hawk their wares between 6:30 in the morning and 7 or 7:15. And you see them clean up and they go back to school. Now, on the other leg of the economic situation is, some persons bring them to these parts where there's peace, where there's commerce, to use them to earn a living. Now, I'm saying all this so we can know how to address them.
Okay.
We have a policy at our primary school level. No child will be left behind. And this was designed after COVID, because most of those kids didn't come back to school.
Okay.
And we said, let us start tracing them, and we're going to their homes, bringing them back to school.
Well, I know we have to go any moment now, but if you can, in 30 seconds, I know it's impossible, but I'm going to try. Okay. In 30 seconds, you spoke about some university, having their matriculation.
Yes.
Which one of them?
The University of Education is having this matriculation too.
Which was the College of Education?
Which were the two colleges of education.
Okay.
But they're now one with two campuses, Ijaniki and Nofori-Jaekwe.
Okay.
So the matriculation would come up on Monday for the pioneer students, and they're about 3,000 plus, 65 courses. And the one for University of Science and Tech Ikorodu will be first week of February, for about 2,018 students to pioneer. Now, the reason why the numbers are low for pioneer is because they still have legacy students that they have to graduate in those colleges.
Okay. Is there a website for anyone who's seeking information about?
Yes, they have their websites.
Okay.
Just Google it.
One can just Google and find it, just for more information.
Yes.
Well, there's so much to talk about, but unfortunately we've run out of time. We have to thank you very much for this morning, for coming here. Tokunbo Wahab is a special advisor to Governor Sanwo-Olu on education in Lagos State. Just to be clear, because you don't know. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Your time. Okay. Well, we have had the home stretch, so I guess we have to shuffle the home stretch now. In all of this melee, there is always a need for us to keep a sane head. How do you do that? That's up. Our final stretch when we return from this break. Stay with us. Naira, we started the other time by talking about those 3 Qs.
Those
3 Qs. Q for fuel, Q for banknotes,
Q for PVC.
Q for PVC. Enough mental stress.
How do you cope with all that stress?
And that's a part, those are fresh stresses or stressors.
Not to mention the ones at home.
The ones you had before these new ones came up. And the 3 of them are coming at about the same time.
So, how do you cope? That is the issue this morning.
And the year is just starting.
We have a mental health consultant, Chris Aboje, with us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Again.
Again, yes.
Yes. First of all, how would you describe what we just spoke about? There's all kinds of issues at home. Then we're faced with these 3 Q-U-E-U-E, not Q. Those Qs. I'm sure you saw some of them coming in here this morning, for the fuel especially.
Yes.
Maybe you tried to get some of the new money and you had to queue at some ATM as well.
Well, I've not tried that yet.
Well,
so you avoided that stress.
Exactly, and I think that brings us to learning to choose our struggles or our stressors.
Our stress.
Yes, because just like he mentioned, these stressors will keep on coming up. Some of them we don't expect, some of them are new, like what we're experiencing right now. But if we try to face all of them at the same time, then we will get overwhelmed. So the idea is to choose your battles and choose them rationally.
You know, when somebody offers you a drink, offers you drinks and says, choose your poison. Choose your stress.
Choose your stress.
Choose your
There are
stress.
some of them that cannot be avoided. For instance, the fuel queues.
You need fuel.
You have to get fuel to go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you don't, you have to look for someone who does or hop on a bus, which could be a lot more expensive.
That's more stressful.
And more stressful.
Yeah.
PVC cards terminal, you have to get it before a particular date.
Yeah.
31st
is the deadline for the money one.
for the queues for the money.
For the money stress.
For the money stress. Yeah. It's just 3 days away. In fact, wait a minute. The PVC, I think that one should end
29.
Tomorrow is 29, right?
29 tomorrow.
So all of these all coming at you in torrents. And that's beside the ones that you came into the new year with. That's beside, you know, health challenges you're managing, family stress, you're a spouse, you're a mother, you're a father, you're a child, and all of those things all in the mix. I don't know why.
Give up, give up, give up. Just give up, please. Give up.
So maintaining a mental stability and still be mentally productive before you can be functionally productive, that's another thing altogether.
Yes, yes, you're correct. In fact, when we look at stress, stress is majorly your perception. It's a natural response, by the way, but it's a natural response that the body initiates as a way of helping us deal with threats, like what we're experiencing right now. But I think one very key thing that we can learn from that definition of stress is that it's a response to perceived threats. That means that while dealing with stress, one thing that is very important is how you see it, right? Now, there are some situations, just like we mentioned earlier, that you can do something about, that you can change, right? And there are some that we can't do anything about at the moment. It's that you need to know the difference. You know, in mental health, there's something we call the serenity prayer. And the prayer just talks about having the serenity to accept the things you cannot change and having the courage to change the ones that you can change, but most importantly, having the wisdom to know the difference.
Desiderata.
Ah.
Isn't that desiderata?
Well, yes, yes. That's the serenity prayer for us. Yeah. So it's basically knowing, you know, having these three things, the serenity, the courage, and the wisdom. Because if you try to change everything, you know, you get stuck. And yes, like you said, there are a lot of deadlines. But thank God this is not a political or, you know, anything. But from a mental health perspective, I would say that if you cannot deal with everything all at once, take your time. You know, take it one step at a time. You know, live in the moment. Because if you try to fix everything all at once with all the deadlines here, you probably will get, you know, overwhelmed and break down as well. And if you do break down, then you can't do every other thing that you need to do.
But when there are deadlines, that means you don't have a choice.
There's always a choice.
You're saying I should choose.
Yes.
Okay, if I don't change my money before Tuesday, that means that money is gone. That money becomes trash. And in this day and age, who wants to be losing money that they don't have to?
True.
Money is scarce. So I'm going to meet that deadline if it kills me. Well, okay, I don't want to be dead.
Of course, now you see that.
Yeah, I don't want to be dead, but I do want to have my money changed. And if I don't buy fuel, I won't be able to go out. So I have to go buy fuel. If I don't get my PVC, I won't be able to vote. I have to be able to vote. I want to be able to vote.
So if you look at, take for example, the exchange of the currency, for an example, you would see that, and this is where being proactive also comes in, right? Being proactive in the sense that, of course, we know that the timeline might be too short for a lot of people, but we've had the message, you know, for a while now. Now, this is not to say that you can exchange everything, but what you can do is that you can limit the amount of old notes that you take up, so that at least that allows you to exhaust the old notes that you have, right? So that's a way of responding in that kind of a situation. But of course, we also know the challenge of going to the ATM and realizing that you still have, when you're trying to withdraw money, you're getting back the same old notes.
So you're trying to get rid of.
That's a challenge. So what many people need to do is to look for other ways, like learning to work with electronic banking, for example. Now that's a way that can mitigate the risk. One thing that we also need to come to accept in life is that you can never erase risk. Right, you can't. Right, life is filled with risk and threats. The best that you can do is to try to mitigate it. That's the goal. The goal is to say, hey, you know what can I do to reduce it to a barest minimum? So we need to come to accept that, hey, no matter what I do, there will still be this amount of risk here and there, but I can try to an extent to reduce the level of risk that I'm exposed to. And while you're on that journey of reducing the risk, you can also, the only thing you can control right now, we can't shift the deadline. What we can choose to do is that we can also change how we see the situation, how we perceive the situation, giving yourself a new narrative to the situation. And the good news is that the brain doesn't work with reality. The brain works with perception. And that means that if you can create your own perception, the brain is just going to work.
It's okay with your mind.
Slow down, slow down, guys. Slow down, slow down. So, because, I mean, you're making it sound like I am living a crazy life. You're saying, okay, so the fact is I don't have cash. What am I supposed to perceive?
Well, you're supposed to find a narrative here. Say, you know what, I don't have cash. For example, say if I was to come up with a narrative for myself, I'll say, you know what, I don't have cash, and this would help me save more because it would limit the amount of money that I spend.
I see.
So that's my narrative.
It's easy for you to say.
I see.
But okay, now speaking to, this whole preparing for difficult times and maintaining the mental stability and all of that, some of them come as such a rude shock. At the risk of going political, there are other issues that will come at you when you least expect them. For instance, just 1-2 days ago, we heard that the election in Osun State, the governorship election has been, what's the word now? Well, the governor has been removed, according to the Election Petition Tribunal. That definitely didn't come expected.
Sure.
The ones who were there before are rejoicing. The ones who are in government now are panicky, literally saying no action should be taken until the appeal has been concluded and all of that. So that's one. Some are going to go to the office and get a rude shock of a letter that they weren't expecting. Sudden death of a child. The governor of, I think it was Nasarawa State, unfortunately, just lost a child not long after that child got married. And so all those things come, in addition to all of the things that are already happening to us in the world. Most certainly, what you are saying is that we need to prepare for these things. Help us, help the Nigerian watching now to get a kind of mental balance of preparing for these unfortunate incidents that we don't want, but as you said, we have to live at the risk of.
Well, just like you've mentioned, we cannot prepare for every threat or every risk. But what we can do is that we can learn or choose how we respond to them when they do happen to us. I'm going to talk about use examples like you've shared, the ones of losing loved ones or losing a child. These are things that nobody prays for. Nobody prays to experience this. And that means that nobody wants to prepare for things like that when they do happen. But the reality of things is that when these things happen, you have to face them. You have to deal with them. The good news is that our human brain is also designed to help us heal from experiences like this, shocks like this, like you've mentioned. Unfortunately, the healing process is not a pleasant one, right? It's not a pleasant one. And grief, for example, for many people, doesn't taste good, doesn't feel good. And so many people, when they experience things like this, are trying to avoid or run away from the pain. But in reality, what they should be doing is, thinking about or talking to people about ways to actually face the pain, because it's a healing process. You're starting from the shock to some people, the anger. And I'm sure a lot of people are angry looking at all that we're experiencing, to, in some cases, bargaining, where you're trying to figure out, okay, what can I do to mitigate the situation? And then some people might even experience some bit of depression or sadness. But the key thing for us, even when we talk about grief or talk about experiences like this, is to get to a place of acceptance, where you get to accept. So if a person got a letter from work and saying, oh, we don't want you anymore, you need to get to a point where you say, hey, you know what, this is the situation of things. I come to accept it. And one thing about acceptance is that it should actually come with responsibility, where you then ask yourself, okay, now I've come to accept this, what can I do about it? What next, exactly. Yeah. Now, we do not in any way ignore the fact that that journey could be stressful. that journey could be distressing for so many people. And that's why we say, for example, using grief as the example, and this extends to many other situations like you've mentioned, is that there's no right or wrong way to go through this. So we're never going to say to you, hey, you know what, it must be this way, or it has to be this way, because we know everybody would respond differently. And because we also know that your response is usually also most times linked to your previous experiences, right? So the experiences you've had before could prepare you. So a person who has lost someone before might, again, in quotes, be better prepared to handle such grief, right? A person who has lost a job before and bounced back might be better prepared to handle another, job loss. Again, this is not universal, but experiences could help us. And in cases where you've not had that experience, you could take your time, but most importantly, have that mindset that, hey, I need to do something to get out of this situation, because that's the goal.
Can any of this lead to depression?
Yes, significantly. One of the causes or one of the triggers for depression could be environmental factors, situational factors, right? So when these things start to happen, of course, they could trigger. But the most important thing we need to understand is that they do not do this directly. So the fact that I'm experiencing, so we cannot say that, oh, because we're experiencing all these things, that people will be depressed. However, having to go through shock and stressful experiences like the ones that we've mentioned could lead us to begin to see life, negatively, right? We begin to see things negatively.
Is that what depression is?
No, we're getting there, right? Okay. So when we look at what we call the cognitive triad of depression, what we say here is that people are likely going to break down with depression if they begin to see themselves negatively, see the world negatively, and see other people negatively. Now, this is because when they begin to see things negatively, it also affects the kind of chemicals that the brain would secrete, right? And one very important chemical, during the treatment of depression is serotonin. So that tells us that, hey, if the serotonin level starts to drop, there's a likelihood that over time it leads to other symptoms that we can then look at as depression. So by the way, before you diagnose anyone of depression, you need to look at the duration and the number of symptoms that they're experiencing. So you might likely see low mood, you might likely see loss of interest in pleasurable activities, irregular sleep patterns, irregular appetite. You're likely also going to see some feelings of hopelessness, helplessness. Some people even begin to engage in risky behaviors. And you can have this list go on, but at least if you have 4 of these symptoms over a period of 6 months, you're likely going to say, hey, this person is depressed. But if these symptoms come with suicidal thoughts, then you're looking at 2 weeks to make the diagnosis and say, hey, you know what, this is, depression. So, and like I said, this can be triggered by environmental factors, altering the person's way of seeing themselves, seeing the world, or seeing the future, which affects chemical secretions and over time can predispose them to depression.
The chemical secretion that you mentioned now just provoked a question in me.
Okay.
What are the consequences for people? Because, you've said it's a journey, it's a process, it's not certain how long it will take for each individual. People respond to things differently. What are the consequences of psychological instability or imbalance, I don't know if that's a professional term, that is unchecked because the fellow is so overwhelmed by the situation? What are the consequences, whether metabolical or whatever consequences, and why someone needs to shape up as quickly as possible?
Well, so there are a lot of positive and as well negative consequences, and I'll use the word being exposed to stress or stressors. Now, typically, the biological journey is that when you are exposed to stress, your body tends to respond. And what your body does is, or what our body would do, is that our body tries to help us cope with the stress, right? And how will it do that? It secretes some chemicals. Some people are familiar with a chemical called adrenaline, cortisol. Now, these are chemicals that, are typical stress chemicals and are designed to help us cope with stressful situations. Now, what do? Is that they increase our body metabolism. So it's almost like they give us some bit of a boost to be able to handle the situation. And that's a good thing, right? However, this is where the risk is. The risk is that for many of us, the body is not designed to handle these, chemicals for a long time. And so when it goes beyond our normal threshold or a certain duration, then these chemicals that were intended or designed to help us would then begin to hurt us. Wow. Right? They start to hurt us. And so the idea here is that people should take their health as their responsibility, and also learn to understand the warning signs. Learn to understand, because the body would always speak. Before it gets to a point where this thing starts to become negative, the body would give you signs. But many of us don't even know what the signs are, or we even ignore the signs, and then that could lead to a breakdown. And this is not just psychological breakdown. It could also lead to physical health breakdowns as well. Other illnesses, like concerns with high blood pressure, concerns with diabetes, concerns with immunity, and even reproduction as well. It could cut across every other physical signs, and frequent illnesses here and there. And some people say, hey, this is village people, but it's not. it's not village, because you go to the hospital and the doctor tells you, oh, you're fine, just go and rest. And you say, no, this doctor doesn't know what he's saying. And by the time you go to 2 or 3 doctors, you're like, no, it must be that woman that saw me leaving the village during December. But we know it's not that. We know that it's just because your body has been overwhelmed by these chemicals, and they're causing problem now.
So where do we go from here?
We need to become proactive. And I think being proactive simply means that we're taking our health as our responsibility. Right? We're taking our health as our responsibility. There's a strong connection between every aspect of health: psychological, physical,
I was just
social.
going to say, we're talking about our mental health now.
Yeah.
Not, I have mosquito bites.
Mosquito bites.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about mental health.
Well, there's a strong connection between all of them, right? In fact, in mental health, we say that you cannot have health without mental health.
True.
Right? Because we understand that there's a strong interaction. Even when we talk about...
But you can have mental health without the other one.
Without physical health.
Yes.
Again, no, because if a person has a physical health concern, it's likely going to also affect their mental health. Imagine... I
have a little rash on my hand. It doesn't affect me mentally.
Well, it depends on how much emphasis you place on the rash. For example, if you're concerned about, hey, if I have this rash and people see this rash, what would it mean?
Yeah.
That is likely going to affect your self-esteem, because now you're in the garden.
No, it's not for you. It's not for you.
It's hidden. It's hidden. So it doesn't matter.
To you.
And some other people extremely finicky.
Exactly.
Wow. What if it spreads? And then it now come there?
Or what if it's a sign of monkeypox or something like that? Now you see that concern can then evolve to anxiety, and that could affect your mental well-being.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Okay.
Well, any more questions?
No more questions, Your Honor.
Dr. Chris Aboje, mental health consultant. Every time you come here, it's something very heavy we're talking about, looking after my mental health.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, I would say to people that there are 3 things that they can do to protect themselves in this situation. Number 1 is being able to intentionally focus on the positives. Avoid listening to the news. Don't go and stay and be like, hey, what's going to happen?
Excuse me.
Now, what I know.
That's our job.
So I would say limit that, right? Especially negative news, right?
But I think a major takeaway from what you said so far is that people should gain perspectives.
Exactly.
That are functional.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good place to anchor it, my partner. Thank you very much for helping us to summarize everything.
Oh, no. Well, that's what you do as a journalist. You summarize the 3-hour news into 3 minutes or less.
And that's our show for today. We'll see you next time. I am Alera Edu.
That's a summary of the program. Amaya Makinde. Please go get your PVC. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Bye.